Hey friends, welcome back to a new episode of Off the Cuff. Today we are doing Pet Sematary from Friday's Let's Say Nice Things About. We'll start with some audience, we'll start with some critic reviews and then we'll do some audience reviews. So let's get to it. Just for reference, this movie scored a 57% with critics and 33% with audiences. So let's see what people have to say about it. Of course, the first three are positive. They're not certified fresh, but they're fresh. Like a B minus for Dennis Schwartz says, casts a somber mood and leaves no room for humor or fun to creep in. I don't think that's the point of the movie, but yeah, that would make sense to me. All right, let's see. This one, Keith Garlington from Keith at the Movies. It's one that will leave you constantly questioning its logic and always aware of its unfulfilled potential. Interesting. Is it that it's aware of its unfulfilled potential? I'm not really sure. um, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure again what it could do better in that regard. This doesn't really give much constructive criticism in that regard. This one from Brian Eggert. At 101 minutes, Pet Sematary feels like it's in a rush to get to the gore, whereas the real horror of this story lies in the justifications that led a rational man to go against everything he believes. It's an interesting review. I don't think this movie is actually that quick to get to the gore. Like it has to at some point, right? But I think this movie does a good job with that side of it. Again, I'm a little biased because I am a parent, so it's really easy for me to empathize and put myself in the main protagonist's shoes in that regard. Um, but I don't know if this review would give it much of a. I don't see why it's a rotten review. I guess it's a 2 out of 4. I don't know. I don't know why it's a negative review based on that. This one from Jesse Hasinger from Sports Alcohol. Gruesome and unpleasant, all while kinda sorta insisting that it's making some kind of insight about the nature of death. Yeah, I mean, I can understand the thought process here. And yeah, it is gruesome and unpleasant, but I also not sure what you would be. I'm not sure what else you'd be looking for in this movie. I mean, like I said in the review, it's more. It comes off more like a slasher movie than maybe what you would consider a Stephen King horror movie. This one from Emma Wolf from Spooky Astronauts. I love where they're going with the dread, and death and dwelling on how insignificant we all are, all that we all are, all that jazz. I love that about this film, but it doesn't deliver as a standalone film for me. That's an interesting. It's an interesting phrasing. So I guess I'm curious. Does it mean that you think you have to find something in the film, like you have to put that in there yourself? That's an interesting way of wording it. Yeah, I so it doesn't work as a standalone film for you. So I guess I don't understand the phrasing, I guess. And that's a me thing, clearly. It's interesting. From Charles Koplinski at Real Talk with Chuck and Pam. The second time around for Stephen King's version of The Monkey's Paw is a hurried muddle that lacks heart. 2 out of 4. I don't completely agree with that. I think I think the movie does a pretty good job of having heart. I think it does a good job of giving you the understanding of where the dad is coming from, wanting to get his daughter back. Um, it gives you a good understanding of John Lithgow's character wanting to help. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that review. All right, let's go on over to the audience score, audience reviews. This one from Rundell. Despite the significant differences from the book, it's not as bad as it might seem. The story itself is well preserved, and the atmosphere of the King Horror is palpable. The atmosphere of the King of Horror is palpable. A few scenes are quite comical, but they don't break the immersion enough to make me feel disgusted. As an adaptation, I give it a 2.5 out of or a 2 out of 5, and as a standalone story or version, I give it a 3 out of 5. Interesting. I mean, that seems pretty. It seems like a pretty fair review, all things considered. Cards on the table. I haven't read Pet Sematary, so I can't speak to how it is as a book to movie adaptation. This one from Sean, 2.5 stars. The original is one of my favorite films, and this was not a bad remake, though not a great one. Typically the ending was poor, unlike the original. Interesting. Again, and I hadn't seen the '80s one either, so I can't speak to that either. This one from Teddy, 3 stars. There was nothing more to really say in this reboot that the original film didn't already cover. I feel like an adaptation of a Stephen King book is acceptable enough when the screenplay is written by Stephen King. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It's hard to gripe with an adaptation when the actual author writes the screenplay. From Tituba, 1.5. This film legit made me sad, and I don't understand how in 2019 they could make a whole horror plot line out of someone who is disfigured. That's not horror, that's just life. Catch up with the times. The movie felt poorly cast outside of Lithgow, and it had none of the humor, heart, or relationships of the book. I liked making Ellie the zombie to subvert expectations, and that little girl did a great job. Interesting. I feel like a lot of people would say that Lithgow um, wouldn't be a good choice for this. But that's really interesting review in that regard. And I'm not sure about the making a whole horror plot out of someone who's disfigured. I mean, it's the fact that she changed personality, unless I'm missing the point of the review, which is entirely possible. This one from Cassandra, 1 star. This is one of the most bland takes on a classic I could possibly imagine. There is no vision here, not adherence to what made the original novel amazing. Again, I haven't read the book, so I can only speak to the movie itself, and I still think the movie itself did a pretty decent job, all things considered. Obviously, if I went back to read the book, I could probably. I mean, it seems pretty universal that this movie didn't follow the book super well, from a lot of the reviews I'm seeing. But just as a movie, I still think it did a pretty decent job. This one from Chad, 3 star. This was an all right movie. It was very creepy, and it had almost no jump scares. The child actors nailed their parts. However, there were several loose ends that the movie never truly tied up. The plot became about the daughter, and so many questions were left unanswered. I personally felt like it should have been longer and explained more things, but the actual horror element was done very well. Yeah, and that's interesting too. At what point horror movies horror movies, generally speaking, in my opinion, do better when they're shorter. They're a little bit more concise. They get everything in there because you can only sustain that horror level for someone for so long, like that anxiety of a horror movie. There's very few horror movies that can be like a 3 hour horror movie, unless you're looking at something like I think The Exorcist is over 2 hours, and there's a couple other ones. But horror is one of those funny ones where it's like if you go much over an hour and a half, you might be in trouble, um, just because of how you can't sustain the horror element for that long. It needs to have a good flow. It can't because you can't stay at that high anxiety for too long. Oh, here's a half star from Dave. What a sorry waste of time, money, resources, everything. People these days can't come up with original ideas, and they use stupid CGI and modern production techniques because they barely have a shared they barely have a shred of creativity. So what's the point here? Redo a movie that was perfect in 1989, pathetic and embarrassing to fathom how sorry it's gotten, movie, music, etc. I hope they lost millions. They deserve losing every single cent. Bitterness. So much bitterness. That's fair. It's an interesting discussion about what, like, how long are your, almost like a statute of limitations, like how long before you can do a remake reasonably. And then it comes down to how good the movie is. So for example, one of the diamonds in the rough we did recently was Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978. But there's a first movie that came out in the late 50s, early 60s. So it was only like 20 years at most between a remake, between the original movie and the remake. And the remake, I think, actually did a better job, especially with the ending. Um, so it's an interesting thing to talk about as far as how long before you can try and remake a movie. And then on top of that, how forgiving are you with a movie? If you remake a movie that was really good, like obviously you're on thin ice. And most of the times movies that are bad, you don't get remakes of because they don't seem like they're going to be commercially viable. So it's interesting to think about in that regard. That said, to look at some of these other arguments of this one, the CGI modern production techniques, I am more of a fan of physical props, like we've talked about in movies before. I'm if you try and go for physical effects more than um, VFX, I or computer generated, I will have a lot more respect. Whether even if the movie doesn't turn out well, I have a lot more respect if you go for the physical effects than all CGI. So it's interesting. And even if they lost money, it would have just been a write off. So probably didn't lose that much. All right, let's see if we can find one more. Oh, this one from Cuba or Cuba. Half star. I'm not sure if the authors have read the book, and if they have, whether they understood it. It's not even about sticking with the original source, but rather about not conveying the main idea. Yeah, Stephen King was one of the writers. So my guess is he was trying, along with Matt Greenberg and Jeff Bueller, to give them their due. Um, my guess is he was trying to show another aspect of the story, like he wanted to show it in a different way or a different light. Um, so that's my assumption is what happened there. Um, all right. I think that's all I got for today because everything is looking very samey. Thank you all so much for watching. Uh, Again, I appreciate you guys so much. Over 25,000 subscribers. Um, we have our first patron for the Patreon, so thank you so much for that, Mr. Bohr. And again, if you're interested in that, you can hop on over. It'll be in the description. Um, Free members and paid members will get shout outs. Free members get access to everything we have on the YouTube channel, and paid members right now, the main thing is the commentary tracks for some of the Let's Say Nice Things About movies. And I'm working on some other stuff. So if you guys have any ideas that would be good content for the Patreon, I'm always down for suggestions. So thank you all again so much. I appreciate all of you. Thank you, and I hope I see you in the next one.